When a billionaire offers you champagne at breakfast and a prenup by lunch, you know they don't see you as family. They see you as a risk. There are few things more humbling than sipping Dom Perignon on a penthouse terrace while your future father-in-law slides a thick prenuptial agreement across a glass table like he's passing you a bar tab. My name is Luca Bellamy, a 30-year-old painter who just happened to have been foolish enough to fall madly in love with a billionaire's daughter. It was a Tuesday. A warm breeze blew through the Upper East Side, rustling the edges of my rolled-up sleeves. I dressed up, pressed shirt, clean jeans, and a blazer that still had the tag inside. The champagne hadn't even warmed in my glass before Mr. Laurier went straight for the paperwork. "Nothing personal," he said, flashing the kind of smile CEOs reserve for hostile takeovers. "Just protecting the family estate. Isabel understands." I looked at her, sitting beside me in a soft ivory blouse, her eyes hidden behind oversized sunglasses. She gave a tiny nod. Not quite approval. More like, "Please, let's just get through this." At 30, I was broke and head over heels in love with the daughter of one of the most powerful men in Manhattan. Isabel Laurier, refined, brilliant, completely out of my league. I painted canvases in a drafty studio in Bushwick. Her childhood dog had a better healthcare plan than I did. We met at a charity gallery 2 years ago. I was delivering a piece, not showing, delivering. She walked past the loading dock, stopped, and stared at the painting I was hauling out of the truck. "Who did this?" she asked. I shrugged. "Me." She asked me to coffee that night. I was too stunned to charge her for the piece. Now here I was, engaged to her, eating figs flown in from somewhere stupid, and being told, in the politest way possible, that I was marrying above my station. Her mother said nothing. She wore pearls the way generals wear medals, stiff, shiny, a little intimidating. I half expected her to pull out a PowerPoint labeled Asset Protection Strategy, Operation Luca. I took the document, read nothing. I'm not proud of that, but at the time, love felt like armor. What could a few clauses do to something built on moonlit walks and stolen kisses in parking lots? "I'll sign," I said. No hesitation. No fight. Just quiet, stupid pride. And fear, if I'm honest. Fear that saying no would mean losing her. Isabel's hand slipped into mine under the table. That was all I needed. Or thought I needed. The wedding came fast. They booked a French chateau. Not rented, booked. A week of pageantry and parties. There were imported swans. Fireworks choreographed to a live orchestra. I'm fairly certain a few heads of state were in attendance. My family was in awe of the opulence. My mom kept asking if I was sure of what I was getting myself into. I was in love. To their credit, they treated my family with a lot of love and respect, which I found surprising. Perhaps because I had signed the prenup, I thought to myself, but Isabel's mom was constantly fawning over my mom. At a point they were in such deep conversation that it took Mr. Laurier's call to get them to join the rest of the party. I guess I was the one they didn't trust. LOL. Someone offered me a truffle the size of a baseball. I asked what to do with it. They said, "Eat it, darling," like I was holding gold dust. There were more truffle shavings than guests. I'd later joked to my friend Les, who couldn't attend because he was working 2 jobs and sleeping on his sister's couch. He texted back, "You still sure this isn't a hostage situation?" I tried to laugh it off. But the truth was, I'd never felt so misplaced in my life. Every smile from her parents looked like a performance. Every toast felt like it ended with, "He'll be gone in a year." The night of the wedding, I found myself alone on the balcony of our suite, staring out over the hills. The party was still going. Music, clinking glasses, distant cheers. Isabel came up behind me, barefoot, wrapped in silk and candlelight. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded, but didn't turn. She leaned against me, head on my shoulder. "You were incredible today." "Thanks. I only dropped 1 canopy." She smiled, then got quiet. "I'm sorry about the prenup," she said finally. I shrugged. "It's fine." "No, it's not," she said. "I hated it. But I didn't want to fight my parents, and I didn't want to lose you either." That got me. "I'll prove them wrong," I said, almost to myself. She looked up. "Luca, you don't have to prove anything." But I did. Not just to her parents. To myself. They saw a charity case with talent, and not much else. A phase she'd grow out of. I wanted to show them I wasn't just worthy of their daughter. I was worthy of the damn table they sat at. Later that night, when she was asleep beside me, I stared at the ceiling and made a quiet vow. One day, they wouldn't just tolerate me. They'd admire me, maybe even envy me. I'd make my name so loudly that even the people who once questioned me would have to admit they were wrong. It was a good dream. It didn't survive the truth that was coming. One day I was selling paintings to college students. 2 months later, I was shaking hands with a man who once mistook me for a valet. It started with a voicemail I almost deleted. "Hello, Mr. Bellamy. This is Katrina DeWitt from the Holland Street Gallery in Soho. We saw your piece, Ashline 3, at a private residence and would love to discuss an opportunity to feature your work in an upcoming show." At first, I thought it was a scam. I'd shown Ashline 3 to exactly no one outside my cramped Brooklyn studio and my circle of struggling artist friends who traded compliments for ramen. That piece was supposed to be part of an unfinished series, one I gave up on halfway through when rent came calling. But the name Holland Street meant something. It was where serious collectors hovered, where art careers were made and quietly buried. Let us know where you're watching us from. And if you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. You have nothing to lose, and it will mean the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video. I met Katrina the next afternoon. She wore black like it was her blood type and said words like visceral palette and cinematic brushwork. I nodded like I understood. She walked through my studio with the reverence of a curator entering a sacred tomb. Half my canvases were stacked against the wall, unfinished. One still had a ramen noodle stuck in the corner. "This is what I've been waiting for," she murmured. "We'll do a solo show. End of the month. Can you produce 5 new pieces by then?" I laughed. She didn't. I didn't sleep for 3 weeks. My hands cramped. My eyes burned. I painted until I forgot which day it was. Isabel brought me my fave meals, mashed potatoes and wings. Sandwiches and espresso were also not in short supply. She also reminded me to blink. The show opened on a Friday evening. I wore a suit and shoes that I hated but felt I had to look apart, and stood beneath my name spelled in chrome letters over whitewashed brick. Luca Bellamy, brutal elegance. I remember watching strangers stare at my work with puzzled reverence, like they were looking for messages only they could decode. One of them said, "There's a kind of savage restraint." Another murmured, "It bleeds without trying." I nodded, like I intended all of it. If only they knew that I just painted from my soul. By the end of the night, every single piece was sold. A man from Berlin offered to fly me out for a commission. Someone else asked if I was represented. My inbox flooded, and somewhere in that haze of applause and canapes, I caught Isabel smiling at me. Not the supportive wife smile, but something deeper. Like a silent "I told you so" with extra layers of love. In the months that followed, everything changed. My paintings were suddenly highly anticipated. Critics used phrases like belligerently intimate and discipline laced with chaos. I didn't always know what they meant, but I liked how they sounded. We flew Tokyo, Berlin, Cape Town, Sao Paulo. I sipped espresso in palazzos and dined beside sculptures I'd studied in textbooks. People introduced me at parties like I was a prodigy, as if I had sprung fully formed from the head of Picasso. And Isabel, she never asked for credit, never leaned into the spotlight. She stood beside me in every city, every interview, every chaotic, glamorous moment, quietly anchoring my ascent. Still, something itched in the back of my mind. A small, stubborn voice that kept asking, "Why now? Why this fast?" I tried to ignore it, pushed it down with praise and champagne. When you've spent a decade being overlooked, success feels like a drug you don't question, just consume. Then came London. We were staying in a converted mansion-turned-hotel with velvet walls and a bathtub you could land a small plane in. I'd just come from an exhibition opening. One of my pieces, a moody abstraction of my father's last letter, had sold for 6 figures. We were in bed, limbs tangled, wine glasses half empty on the nightstand. Isabel was quiet, tracing circles on my chest with her fingertip. "You ever wonder how it all turned so quickly?" she asked. I chuckled. "Don't jinx it." She sat up, folding her legs beneath her. Her face was unreadable, calm but resolute. "I need to tell you something." I shifted upright, heartbeat skipping the way it does when someone says that, and you know it's not about laundry. "I paid for your first show," she said. "I bought 3 of your pieces through different names. I hired Katrina. She owed my father a favor." The silence that followed was thick enough to sculpt. "What?" "I believed in you. I always did. But no one was paying attention. You needed a leg up, and I had the means. I never lied, I just nudged. I blinked. So Katrina didn't just see Ashline 3 in someone's loft. No. I made sure she saw it, and she loved it. And then made sure she couldn't ignore it. She reached for my hand. I didn't take it. You're here because of your talent, Luca. Not because of me. I just opened the door. Every other piece on that first exhibition was snatched up without my input, because you're that good." The air felt thin, like we'd climbed too high too fast. I stood up, moved toward the window. London blinked back at me in cold, glittering silence. All this time, I thought I'd made it, that I'd clawed my way out of obscurity through grit and genius and sleepless nights. And now, it felt like I'd been handed a cheat code. My rise wasn't fraudulent, but it wasn't untouched either. My story, my validation, had fingerprints all over it. "You should have told me," I said finally, my voice dull. "You should have trusted that I could do it on my own." Isabel didn't argue. She just nodded, lips pressed thin. "I loved you," she whispered. "I still do. And I was tired of watching the world ignore what I knew was brilliant." I didn't respond. Not because I didn't believe her, but because I didn't know if I believed in myself anymore. That night, I slept facing the wall. And the next morning, I booked a one-way train out of London. When a man's ego is bruised, he doesn't bleed. He sulks in the woods with a paintbrush and a chip on his shoulder. When I left Isabel, I didn't pack much. A few clothes, my sketchbook, some black canvases, 3 brushes that had survived the storm of my overnight success, and the rusted key to a rental cabin upstate that I hadn't visited since grad school. No dramatic goodbye. No shouting match. Just a quiet note on the kitchen counter that said, "I need to remember who I was before all this." I didn't expect her to chase me. And she didn't. Maybe she knew better than I did what I was really chasing, or running from. The cabin in Pinefield had spotty internet and cell service, and furniture that could file a complaint with OSHA. But it had light. Northern light that filtered through pine trees and made even my self-pity look romantic. I chopped wood badly, burned toast daily, and painted like a man possessed. At first, it was just for me. No labels, no galleries, no curators with adjectives like feral elegance. Just raw canvas and silence. I painted what I couldn't say, what I didn't know I was still grieving. Not Isabel, but the identity I thought I'd earned. Then the rumors started. I don't know how they found me. Maybe someone saw me at the farmer's market buying 6 cans of beans and a gallon of turpentine. Maybe the art world has its own secret CIA. Either way, my unsigned work started showing up. A gallery owner claimed she found a mysterious canvas in a diner bathroom. She didn't. I sold it for $500 to a carpenter named Joel, who hung it above his fireplace until his cousin recognized my style. Within a few months, collectors were whispering about the elusive Luca Bellamy. The vanishing visionary, one critic called me. Another theorized I had gone blind, or joined a monastery in Bhutan. The truth, I was painting raccoons off the porch, and wondering if anyone in town knew how to fix a leaking roof. And yet, my name wouldn't die. A piece I'd swapped for groceries turned up at a private auction in LA sold for $88,000. A painting I left behind at a local motel ended up in a Swiss magazine. The headline, "The Lost Bellamy?" They talked about my brushwork, my tone, my evolution. But most of all, they talked about the feeling. That was the kicker. These people, the patrons, the critics, the fanatics, they loved the work. Genuinely. No curated illusion. No PR scaffolding. Isabel hadn't written their reviews. She hadn't paid them to stare in awe. These were strangers who had nothing to gain by loving my art, and yet they did. The validation I thought was tainted now felt undeniable. These reactions weren't bought. They were earned. And then came the envelope. No return address. Just crisp handwriting in black ink. I nearly tossed it with the rest of my ignored mail. But something about the weight made me pause. Inside was a single note, and signed, but I recognized the careful, commanding penmanship immediately. We'd like to be on the waiting list for your next piece. No pressure, just admiration. RL, Richard Laurier, Isabel's father. The man who once offered me a prenup like it was a flu shot. I laughed. Out loud. Alone. Then I pinned the note on the fridge with the only magnet I owned. A souvenir from a gas station that said, in chipped red letters, "Bite me." I stared at it for a while. Not with bitterness. More with bemused exhaustion. Somehow, the man who'd tried to legally wall off his daughter from my poverty now wanted to buy the thing he tried to dismiss. Life's funny like that. Or cruel. Or both. That night, I sat by the wood stove with a glass of cheap wine and let myself think about Isabel. About her face the night she told me the truth, how calm she'd been, how scared. She'd believed in me more than I believed in myself. That was the part I'd missed. I thought she'd puppeteered my success, pulled strings behind the curtain. But really, she'd only cracked the door open and prayed I'd walk through it. I had, and I'd slammed it on her way out. She hadn't built my talent. She'd simply seen it clearly before anyone else did. And I, proud idiot that I was, resented her for it. Because deep down, I hadn't believed I was worth the applause. Now I wasn't so sure. About the worth, yes. But more importantly, about what I'd thrown away to prove a point no one was even arguing anymore. I looked around at the paintings leaning against the cabin walls. Wild, brutal, tender things. I saw parts of myself in each one. And parts of her. A tilt of light. A certain calm in the brushstroke. A memory smudged into color. The world hadn't forgotten me. But the question that mattered now wasn't could I make it without her? It was did I even want to? She didn't come back with tears in her eyes or roses in her hand. Just a blazer, a contract, and that look that made COs flinch. When I opened the cabin door and saw her standing there, I didn't feel the earth shift or the violins swell. I mostly just panicked about the half-eaten Pop-Tart stuck to my shirt. She looked like Wall Street had been trying to keep up with her. Steel gray blazer, no-nonsense heels sunk slightly in the pine needles, and a portfolio under her arm that probably held things more valuable than my entire woodpile. "Hi," she said. That was it. No dramatic reunion. No slow-motion run into my arms. Just hi, because that's who Isabel was. Always poised. Always calculated. But never cold. "You didn't have to come all the way up here," I muttered, stepping aside to let her in. "I know," she said, brushing past me like she owned the place. And technically, considering the land lease, she probably did. "But I didn't want this to be another letter you magnet to your fridge." She dropped the portfolio on the kitchen table and popped it open. Inside, a commission contract. From Laurier Holdings. Not a personal gift. A business deal. The real kind. "We want you to do a series. My father wants 20 pieces. One for each boardroom." I raised an eyebrow. "Boardroom art? You think my stuff's that sterile now?" She gave me a look that melted sarcasm off my tongue. "No," she said. "I think it's that powerful now." She picked up a bottle of wine I'd opened and poured some for herself like she was home. But I also knew that this was her signature move when she was about to get brutally honest. Only that she was usually holding and drinking from an expensive wine glass. "I'm not here to fix you," she added. "I'm here because I never stopped believing in you. Not the guy who disappeared, not the vanishing visionary they talk about in art blogs. You. The stubborn, brilliant, moody Brooklyn painter I fell in love with." I sat. For once, I had nothing clever to say. She didn't ask for forgiveness. And I didn't beg for another shot. We just talked. About everything. The show she secretly funded. The backlash I felt. The hurt I buried. The way I ghosted her like a coward wearing flannel. And underneath it all, the love that never unraveled, even when we did. Turns out, while I'd been sulking in the woods, she'd been running an empire. After her father's minor stroke, Isabel stepped in and, in typical Laurier fashion, made the company more profitable, more ethical, and more feared. Mergers bowed to her. CEOs blinked too slowly and lost deals. Her mother said she'd perfected the art of smiling while cornering someone legally. And yet, here she was, sitting in my crooked cabin, sipping wine out of a chipped mug, asking if I still wanted to be married. Not begged, not pleaded, asked. My answer wasn't some dramatic kiss. It was quieter than that. I just took her hand and said, "I never stopped." 2 summers later, we moved back to the city. Not into her penthouse, not into my shoebox, but into a loft that had space for canvases and toy blocks, because, yes, we had a toddler now. A wiry, wild little girl with her mother's eyes and my inability to follow instructions. Our first major fight post-reunion wasn't about art or money. It was about whether our daughter could spill apple juice on one of my old canvases. "I'll hang it high," I said. "She'll climb," Isabel replied. "She's 2. She's our 2-year-old. Fair point." Mr. Laurier never mentioned the prenup again. Last I heard, it was gathering dust in some legal folder titled Unnecessary Precautions. He did, however, send a note after my first piece for the company was unveiled. It read, "We were wrong. She wasn't marrying beneath her. She was investing early." It's framed, right next to the painting he paid $250,000 for. Sometimes, our daughter runs barefoot through my studio while Isabel critiques a half-finished piece with wine in one hand and a teething ring in the other. It's messy, loud, unpolished, but so is life. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not trying to paint my way out of it. I used to think the greatest insult was being doubted. Turns out, the hardest thing to swallow is being rightly believed in. Some people wait a lifetime to be discovered. I had someone who discovered me before I even knew who I was. And yeah, it bruised my pride. But it gave me a life I couldn't have painted better myself. That's my story. Some say I should have walked when the prenup hit the table. Others say I should have stayed and swallowed my pride. But here's the truth. Sometimes love isn't about proving yourself. It's about letting yourself be seen. So, what would you have done? Signed the prenup? Walked away? Or disappeared until the world finally caught up? Tell me in the comments. And hit subscribe for more stories, because sometimes the best comebacks don't make noise. They make masterpieces.